Hello, friends. We are here to review The Real Housewives of Miami, Season 6, Episode 1. This is my first season reviewing Miami, and this is my second season watching, so I started on Season 5, just for context. We start off the episode with a flashback to the reunion, so obviously that tells me that this season is going to talk, or at least this premiere is going to talk a bit about what happened at the reunion, which was insane. And obviously, one couch did better than the other. And, I like that we do get Alexia quite pointedly saying, she didn't like a lot of what she said and saw at the reunion. And so now she feels like she's going to, bring the group back together. I thought it was very surprising to hear, but I will say Alexia definitely has her moments of being reasonable, but a lot of things, she's very impressionable. I'll say that. So she's very easily swayed. So that doesn't necessarily always stay that way, but we'll talk about that. Obviously, the thing that she's planning obviously didn't go well. We get a small clip of it, and then they jump to 1 week earlier. So we'll start there. Still with Alexia, we're talking about something else that I think is important to cover. We're talking about the fact that her husband Todd did an online apology to Anthony, but he didn't tell Alexia about it, in like before he did it. And she doesn't mind that he apologized because they talked about that and she felt like he should, and I feel like he should. But, she didn't feel like it needed to be online. And then we jumped to a confession of Nicole, Anthony's wife or fiance, saying the same thing. She's like, I think, the apology was great. We appreciate that, but I don't know if it had to be online. And everybody's like, yeah, it was weird. It was 9 minutes. I had no idea that had even happened, but I'm glad that he did that because I do think that he and Alexia were very weird and aggressive towards Anthony. And it was a weird narrative that I feel like people were trying to put out about Anthony that I just did not necessarily agree with last season. So it's good that we've done that. We are on a boat, and Larsa and Lisa are there, both with their men. I'm just not, I'm going to tell you up front, not going to be too dive, into the whole Larsa and Marcus Jordan thing. I just don't care. I've never cared from the day one of it all. I think it's interesting that he's on the show now, so great. Let's have a chat about it. Let's have a kiki. Let's cackle. But I just don't care too much. And then Lisa's there with her new man. I'm happy that she has a new man. I'm just always looking to see how deep the relationship might be because, she's going through a tumultuous time, so I totally get it. And she's still going through the divorce, so of course she talks about it a lot. But I do think it's weird how much she talks about it with him, and obviously they touch on it a little bit, and he's there to support her at this time, but he's looking forward to a time where they don't have to talk about that anymore. But she's always going to be very, tapped into the whole Lenny of it all because they have very young children, and I just, it is weird. And she kept the ring and she's still wearing it, so I don't know. I'm just interested to see where this relationship really goes. But I think it's nice that she has him around and he's filming, but for what purpose? We move on to Nicole remodeling her new house with her man. They talked about a lot about the coins that they have. I'm not really I don't know, but I like Nicole and nice house, and they're remodeling it. And she acknowledges that they're not planning the wedding yet because they're focused on the house. I don't know if there's tea there, but we'll see. Gertie shows up. Gertie looks really good. I wasn't really living for all of Gertie's looks last season. I was just getting to know her, right? It's my first season. So I'm really getting into her looks and her aesthetic, and I didn't love them, but she looks really good this season. I'm loving what she's giving. Nicole's talking to Gertie, and she lets her know, she talked to Larsa, and they're in a better place, which is interesting as hell, because Larsa was such a tyrant at last year's reunion. She was just oh my God. So I think it's very interesting that they're in a better place, and, Gertie lets her know, well, we're not. At the end of the day, she approached me about me saying that she was a fakest. I think she said it at BravoCon. And Nicole's like, well, have you guys talked about it? And Gertie's like, not really. I got other things on my mind. At this point, she's talking about the fact that she's been scheduled to have a biopsy, but the whole her being diagnosed with cancer hasn't occurred yet. So she's just talking about the biopsy at this point. We're moving on, and we see Julia, and I like how paced this this premiere is. I love when we get the premiere and we get to see each of the ladies pretty quickly at least and see what's going on with them. We get small link ups and then we get like a group thing. So I think that this was like the perfect formula for a premiere. But yeah, we move on to Julia, and she's talking about the fact that, you know, they are holding off on the adoption. She doesn't relate it to the fact that her wife had been sick, but obviously her wife had, you know, throat and breast cancer, and thank God she, you know, conquered both. But I was wondering if there was a connection there. She didn't necessarily say. And then I also was thinking, like, I wonder if, because obviously last season she talked a lot about, you know, wanting more kids. And I think her wife was more so like, well, can we spend more time together? And she was more so like, I'm bored with that. So I was wondering if maybe the situation made her feel like, I was just thinking about it the whole time it was happening, made her feel like, okay, it is important that we spend more time together outside of having more kids. And she kind of speaks to that a little bit. She also lets her wife know that, you know, Alexia asked her out to lunch, and, you know, she doesn't necessarily want to hold a grudge when it comes to Alexia. She really wants to test the waters. And so I think that that's interesting. I'm definitely fascinated by the fact that Alexia reached out to Julia, because it just definitely feels like, it felt like last season they're very dismissive towards Julia. So I'm interested to see how that relationship plays out. We get some clips of like Lisa, you know, she's contesting her prenup, so she's going to a deposition. You know, this is a legal thing, so obviously they're going to show it, and it obviously goes off of last season. My only issue is there's not going to be, I presume there's not going to be any resolution of it, like, immediately. So I understand it being a storyline because it is happening and it's part of her personal story. But my only thing is, if this doesn't come to a resolution at the end of the season, where have we really gone? And what else are we going to get with Lisa? So it's hard for me to really jump into that, because I'm just like, I mean, well, we can't do anything. We're obviously not going to see the deposition. So we see you prepping for it and talking about it and stuff like that, and you're contesting your prenup. There's not much else that we can get from that. You know, that's all. And I really like Lisa, so I'm hoping that there's more to come outside of that. Kiki, MARYSOL, and Alexia link up, and, you know, Kiki's talking about dating. I really like Kiki. I'm wondering how much of the dating they're going to show, so I'd be interested to see that. And I thought that she looked amazing in her confessional. Those are my only notes for her as of right now. Alexia brings up the fact that she's going to be, you know, holding herself accountable to bringing the group back together. I wonder if she necessarily feels like she was the spearheader of all of the mess last season, because she was at the forefront of it, but I think it was a combination of her, Larsa, and MARYSOL. But I do think that Alexia obviously is more of a figurehead for this group, so maybe she does feel some accountability for that. But then I also obviously feel like it's probably somewhat producer prompted, right? Because you need that. So, you know, but she does seem like she's sincere in it. And honestly, Alexia does seem like a very likable person, but some of the stuff that she does is just like, ugh. But obviously, as she's saying it, I'm wondering how MARYSOL feels about it, because in my opinion is, and I felt like this last season, obviously I didn't do reviews, so I'm here to tell you now. My opinion was, even last season, like, I think Alexia does want to have relationships with the ladies in the group, and I think that she possibly could. And there were even instances last season where, like, she will be getting to a better place with people, specifically Adriana, but then MARYSOL will always come in and be like, well, no, and just be very negative and put a wrench in it. And so MARYSOL just is a negative person to me, and I just feel like she's not somebody that's willing to move forward with things, and I think that hinders Alexia a lot. And then this part was confusing to me, because she, you know, Alexia kept saying she was inviting all of the ladies. She had said it before this scene. But then Kiki asked her, you know, was Adriana invited? And she says no. So I'm like, well, that's not all of the ladies. And I thought that was weird. And she even says in her confessional that she was willing to move past the Frankie thing that, you know, Adriana said, which was terrible. But I never felt like she said it to be malicious, to be honest. I think that MARYSOL really dragged that and wanted Alexia to think that. But I don't think anybody really thought that she said that to be malicious at all. So I was happy to hear that she was willing to move past it, but then she comes up with this excuse to say, but I can't move forward with her because she went on a press tour and she was saying negative things about me. For me, I just think that that's BS, and I just don't believe that she's really upset about that. I think it's still a MARYSOL thing. And then even in that, Kiki's kind of talking, and she's like, well, don't we want to move forward and move past things, like give people another chance? And while she's speaking, Marysol being negative, kind of cuts her off, and she's like, spare yourself. Like, no, I'm not willing to move forward. And it's like, girl, we already know that. Like, come on now, be for real. Julia and Alexia link up, and they're, immediately, which I like. Before you get into the nitty gritty of stuff, I like for the girls to do a little kiki and cackle. So, they cackle and they bond, they talk about, girl stuff. And, finally, they throw a little shade in there, and Julia's like, oh, look, we're alone, like, Marysol isn't there, and Alexia's like, oh, and Adriana isn't here. So I'm like, ooh, ladies. So it got cute, but I just feel like there's not much to talk about. Like, I think that we know, because they both feel the same way. Alexia even says in her confessional, like, I think Julia's cool, but I feel like Adriana influences her. I don't agree with that, but I definitely, because I just feel like Alexia made a bit of an ass of herself last season, but tacked on with the Marysol of it all. So I just feel like people were holding her accountable. I don't feel like anything that Julia was ever saying to Alexia had anything to do with the Adriana of it all. I think that she had her own opinion. I think, as we see, especially after this episode, Julia has her own independent, very strong opinion. So I don't agree that Adriana influences Julia, but I definitely agree that Marysol influences Alexia. Let's be for real. And Alexia has never rebutted that. Like, every time people say it, because it's been said like 5 times in this episode, she never says no. I also really love this haircut on Julia. It's super cute. But I like that Julia also comes in and she's like, I'm just going to say this to you. If you're having this New Horizons event and there's one single lady that you're not inviting, then I think that's just going to cause problems, and it's going to be counterproductive. And like I said, she didn't rebut this. Like, Julia kind of goes in and goes, like, she kind of hits the nail on the head. She's like, she doesn't even imply or like ask. She's just like, seems like you're doing this for Marysol. Like, Marysol is kind of like blackmailing you emotionally, and it's just like, she doesn't want you to invite Adriana. She wants you to have an issue with Adriana, and it's just not that deep. And Alexia never says no. Like, it's like she knows that that's a fact. And I like that she was still calm, because we know Alexia can go 0 to 100, and she's like, listen, like, I want to be in a better place with Adriana, so I'll talk to her and I'll see what I can do. And then we jump to 24 hours later, and she's meeting with Adriana. The only thing was, Adriana shows up with this white flag and being cute and being funny, which I didn't mind. I like Adriana, but I do think that she can be a bit cringe sometimes. But, like, I just feel like the girls overreact sometimes. So at this moment, I feel like Alexia's overreacting, because she's kind of like, I guess she didn't understand the white flag, which is fine, but she was kind of being adversarial for the sake of being adversarial. And it's like, girl, relax. But, they kind of immediately get into the nitty gritty of it. Again, maybe this was edited out, but Alexia never brought up that whole, like, press tour thing or whatever. She kind of more so was rehashing old stuff, which is just never a good idea. And I like that, at first it felt like Adriana was being defensive, because she can tend to do that as well and kind of dig herself into a hole. But she's like, look, I'm not here to add insult to injury. Like, I want to move forward. And she brings up what Julia basically said. She's like, I feel like you're fighting somebody else's battle. Again, Alexia does not push back. She's like, I feel like you're fighting Marysol's battle with me. And, like, in our 13-year friendship, I've never done anything to hurt you. And Alexia's like, well, in the past couple months you have. And I'm like, well, girl, that just feels like a reach. You know what I'm saying? For the sake of the Marysol thing. And I just feel like they should move forward. And I feel like they had a conversation where sometimes you need this with a friend, where you guys are kind of butting and missing each other. And just have a conversation where it's like, we've been on some weird stuff, but let's acknowledge that we're not trying to be weird to each other. We're not trying to hurt each other. We're not trying to be malicious towards each other. Like, we really do want to move forward, but we've just been missing each other for whatever reason. Too many outside sources. And I feel like that's the conversation that they had, and they've decided to move forward. So I'm fine with that. And now, Adriana's invited to the event. But now, though, obviously, Alexia has to tell Adriana, I don't remember the time span, but like the distance between the lunch with Adriana and now telling Marysol. But, Alexia has to tell Marysol, and she's telling her on the day of the event. They're both in glam. And, she tells her, and Marysol's like, I'm really not in the mood. being Marysol. And Alexia starts crying, and she's like, I need you there because Todd's already not coming. So she's listening to it. She's like, why? And, basically he says he doesn't want to come because he feels like, those people are not his friends. They're not Alexia's friends. And he doesn't want to hear weirdness about, the social media apology to Anthony. And for me, I just feel like now Todd feels like and is looking like the weird guy that they were trying to make Anthony out to be last season, right? Like they were trying to make Anthony seem like he was just this like random antagonist to the group, and he was such a weird guy. He did all this weird stuff, but now it's really coming off as Todd, because Todd was very, for me, which I don't even know because I just didn't get into the Twitter of it all. So I didn't even really get people's perspective of Todd, but it seems like he has his own perspective of himself. And he was coming out very just weird and aggressive last season. So now I feel like he saw that and he's feeling insecure about it. And rightfully so, like, you were being weird. But he should take the approach that Alexia is taking to, get in front of it, acknowledge it, and move forward. But he don't want to be there. So, Alexia is saying, my man's not going to be there, so I really need you to be there. But even after she says all that, Marysol's like, I may come, I may not. So, girl, whatever. The ladies are in the car, and this really kind of annoyed me. It's Kiki, Adriana, and Julia. And Adriana, they ask her, how's everything with, Alexia? And she's like, I like Alexia, but I feel like sometimes I feel judged by her. And I'm like, oh, here we go. And she's just like, I feel judged by her because she feels like she has more money than us and she looks down on us. And it's only because she has Todd. Like, she has Todd now, and Todd has a coin. So she feels like she's better than us. And Julia's like, like, y'all know that Mariah meme from Married to Medicine? Like, girl. And she's in her confessional like, I don't like that because I'm, like, advocating for you and trying to get y'all back to a better place, and now you're doing this. And I personally felt like, if you have that feeling, it's nothing wrong with having that feeling because that's how you feel. But when you had that lunch with Alexia and y'all were moving forward, and Alexia, allegedly what Alexia is looking for is for you to be honest, then you should have said that to her while y'all were having lunch. So now I'm like, this is going to be bad. I don't know when it's going to come up, but it's going to be bad. They pull up, they're kikiing and cackling, and, we get to a point where Larsa is explaining to the ladies that, I'm not cool with Gertie because she called me fake. And I just don't care because I do feel like Larsa's fake. Like, Larsa just comes off very just disingenuous and very, like, selfish. Like, especially at the reunion last season. Like, it just feels like Larsa only cares about herself, but then she kind of puts herself in other people's business as well. And it's like, girl, like, shut up. While she's doing this, Gertie walks in, and we get a couple scenes where they're, doing their hi-his and hellos. And, they get off to the side, and Larsa approaches Gertie in front of everybody. She's like, well, Gertie, I thought we were cool. Like, why did you call me fake? And Gertie doesn't back down. She's like, girl, like, the way that you treated me, like, last year, you were very dismissive to me. And also at the reunion, like, you were very dismissive to me on my points and, like, jumping in when I was, going back and forth with Alexia. And, something I hate that the housewives do, I feel like they do this across the board. They're always like, well, so-and-so never said anything negative about you. They never said anything negative. That's fine, but nobody's talking about that. Gertie is talking about the way that she's being treated. So you're not, and Larsa, she is just so delusional. Like, she literally will say something and she feels like it is the point of the century. She's like, yeah, I never said anything negative about you, so I'm a great friend to you. I'm supportive. No, girl, she's talking about the way you treat her. And you treat her like trash. Like, watch last season, watch last reunion. Like, you treated her like trash. That's not a good friend. So, Larsa's standing in that terrible point, and she's going to be there for a while because she's Larsa. And Gertie's like, I'm not dealing with this. So she leaves off. As this is happening, Marysol comes in, and Julia clocks that tea. She's like, oh. Marysol is here, and she said she didn't want to be here if Adriana was here, but oh my God, she's here. And she's like, this was like scripture, honey. I feel like she had just opened up the book, the good book, and she's in her confessional. She's like, Marysol is a problem in this group, okay? And she stirs up trouble and she hides her hands. Just thinking to myself, like, she had to be there though. Like, this is an all cast event. This is the first all cast. This is the premiere. I'm sure they were told this is going to be the first episode, so she had to be there. She's only a friend of the show. At the end of the day, she wasn't going to miss that camera time. Like, let's be for real. But I knew she was going to use the excuse and say, well, Alexia needed me here, so I had to be here. Girl, so let's see how that played out. I like that Alexia came in and, she gave her speech and, she's like, I want everything to be better. And I like that she addressed the Todd thing because people were asking, but I don't know how much it was going to escalate. But she addressed it and she's like, I know everybody's wondering where Todd is, so am I. And she's like, but we're not getting a divorce. And I'm like, but she's like, things are just, he just felt some type of way or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But it has nothing to do with you, Anthony. And I like that she made that clear. I thought that was very adult of her. But in that, she thanks everybody for being there. And she also specifically thanks MARYSOL, which I just felt like was very cringy because I feel like that adds the implication that MARYSOL was going to try to not be there. So that felt messy to me. Not that I feel like she was doing it to be messy or like intentionally malicious, but I just feel like she should have had that conversation separately because it probably put everybody in the group like, why is she specifically thanking MARYSOL, right? But before anybody can do that, Julia has showed up to work, baby. Like, she's like, oh yes, MARYSOL, like, I'm shocked that you're here. Like, girl, like, you said you didn't want to be around Adriana and you're here. Like, you knew that we were all coming, so now you had to show up, right? And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, Julia, I was just saying that, girl. Like, girl, are you listening to me? She's like, girl, I'm here to support, Julia's like, I'm here to support my friend, but it seems like you're here to harm your friend. And, she's like, oh, MARYSOL's like, girl, why would I harm Alexia? She talks very just like, why would I do that? Like, why would I? Alexia, please speak. And Alexia's like, girl, she's in her confessional like, I feel like you need to fight your own battles. And it's like, because you get the point. Everybody in this group done told you that you follow up behind MARYSOL, you let her put the gas in your tank, and you let her get you upset and cause these problems, and you can't even refute it. Especially after what happened last season, you had to have seen it, Alexia. Come on, you're such a sweet lady. Come on now, please. So she's not getting herself into it, and MARYSOL's obviously upset by that, and Julia is really getting into her, and she tells it to her face. She's like, girl, like, you are the problem in this group. She tells her you're selfish for making your friend make a choice as to whether Adriana could come or you could come, and you're devious. And she is going in. But in the midst of this, Gertie breaks it up. She's getting emotional, and she's just like, I can't really hear this. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to hear this noise. And, she gets upset. She talks to her husband. She's talking about leaving at this point. And then there's kind of just a weird point where, like, everybody's kind of, like, getting up and leaving. So I don't know how long the party really lasted. I didn't necessarily get the indication that, like, everybody was leaving early because of what was happening, but it felt like everything had run its course along with the beef. She's leaving, and even as she's trying to leave, seems like Larsa wants to film more. She's like, well, you're leaving, like, what's the tea? Like, she wants to have this argument again. And Gertie's just like, girl, stop. Like, I can't do this. I can't have this. She's very emotional. And she's like, just don't ask me any questions, but just know, like, I'm gonna need you. Just be there when I need you. Like, I don't have time for this. But Larsa's still trying to, which really just agitated me. I'm gonna give her grace, because she didn't know what Gertie was going through. But at the same time, Larsa just like like, she just wants to fight. She wanted that so badly. Like, she just always wants to be so right. And it's just like, Larsa, just sit down and shut the hell up for about 6 minutes. Like, just shut up. Even if nothing was going on with Gertie triggering her to have this breakdown, just shut the hell up. Have the conversation, and if somebody's mood has visibly changed, she said it, she's like, she was yelling at me, now she's crying. If it's changed, then just be smart enough to realize that there's probably something else going on, okay? And let's just not argue right now. But it felt like she wanted to argue so badly, and it makes sense because it's Larsa. But, at the end of the day, we find out, that right before this, Gertie had found out that she was diagnosed with cancer. And at that point, she was in a space where, like, she didn't even want to call it cancer. She didn't want to hear cancer. And that's just heartbreaking to hear. So, we'll see. I'm very interested to see when exactly she decides to share it with the group and where it goes from here. But I just thought that this was an amazing premiere. I thought it was amazing. I thought it had all the pieces that it needed to have. And I am very excited by, Alexia's new juxtaposition and her maybe distancing herself from the toxicity of MARYSOL. And I'm very excited by, Julia having this voice and being opinionated and standing up for herself. And even if, Adriana's not in the mix. And I'm interested to see what happens with Adriana putting her foot in her mouth. So, like, I'm ready to see it. And I'm excited. And I will see y'all next episode.